Please remember that this session is being recorded, so if you want to look at the session at a later stage, you are welcome then to find it on the e-learning page under the webinars for this specific group. Okay, I see Tanya told me that she started looking at different topics and looking at the research that she can get the topics before she decides on one. That's good. I think this session will be about just basic orientation for those of you that haven't done the module yet. And what we find is that actually just choosing the topic is one of the things that really takes a lot of time of students. So that is why we actually do this additional section just to help you getting started. If you can actually identify a topic and or identify a host company that you can use for the research, that is one of the biggest hurdles that students face on this, and they waste a lot of time on it. This is a very time intensive module, and if you don't keep up with the schedule, it is quite difficult to finish on time with a quality report. Okay, so let us start in this regard, and please, if you have questions along the way, just put them in the chat. I will pick them up as I see them and then try and answer as well as I can. So for today, the purpose of this discussion is to give you just the orientation of what will be expected from you for this particular module and the learner guidelines. It also gives you a head start on finding a topic and beginning with Chapter 1. Chapter 1 is singularly the most important chapter of the whole research report, because there you identify the problem and you then go into delving into the problem to understand what is the underlying issues with the problem, and then identify a scope that is doable in this semester, that is will enable you to actually do research and so pass this module on the quality and the academic standards that is required for this particular module. So what we are going to look at this is just the overview of the module, key risk and success factors. We're going to look at the learner guideline, because that is the one upsetting thing about this module. We see so many students that really did not bother going through the learner guideline, because if you go through the learner guideline and you actually look at these webinars and preferably attend a class as well, your success rate is just increasing. But if you don't bother with those support materials and mechanisms put there for you, really, who do you blame for your particular problems then finishing this module? So what we are going to do is then look at the research process steps, how to find and refine a topic, and then starting your Chapter 1. On, I think, the 10th of March, we will do another webinar that is focused in specifically on the whole of Chapter 1. So this is only a start, some orientation, and then helping you find a topic and get started on Chapter 1. Okay, the biggest risk factors is, research is not rocket science, but it takes time. And if you don't do your time management and keep up with the schedule, doing one chapter every 2 weeks, you are not going to finish in time. Because at the latter end of the module, that is really where your unknowns come in. Maybe it takes you longer to do your field research that you anticipated for, and so on and so on. And if you did not keep up with the schedule, that will catch up with you, and you will just hand in a paper that is not up to standard. Again, not reading the learner guidelines. It is so surprising that people do not bother to go through that document. Not watching the webinars available on e-learning and or attending classes if you can. And then very, very important, not studying the Harvard guidelines. You know by now about the negative marking, and citations is worth 5%. And the list of references, if it's not done according to the Harvard guidelines, 10%. Now, if you've worked so hard for this report, are you really willing to sacrifice 15% on your document? I don't think so. You know, it's basic technical issues that you need to get to know very, very well. All right, I know this has been going for a year now, that changes to the module, but somehow we still find that students use the old learner guidelines. This is now a semester module. You have from now until the 31st of May, and that's it. That's your module. This is a mini dissertation. It's not a full dissertation. So you have 50 pages for the body of the report. It means from chapter 1 until chapter 5, the end of chapter 5. This page restriction does not include the cover page, the table of content, the reference list, etc., etc. But please don't play around with your font or start dumping stuff in the appendices when you see you are running out of pages. There are only 5 chapters. The old module had 6 chapters. This module, 5 chapters. So use your 2018 learner guideline. Don't use an older one. Make sure that you get the most recent guidelines on the e-learning page. It's all there for your support. And then please take note, all students repeating the module must pick a new topic. You cannot just modify the one that you had in the last semester, or just, you know, sort of change a few things and think that you can continue with that. You must pick a new topic. The assessment submission date for semester 1 is 31st of May before 3 o'clock. And I think if you've reached this stage, you know, round about 2 hours before 3 o'clock, everybody tries to submit and the servers get all blocked up, and then your paper goes through late and you are penalized. You will be penalized. So please bargain on your time management to submit very early on the 31st of May, or better do it on the 30th. Okay? But what this also means is that you have only 3 months. You've got March, April, May, that's it, to do 5 chapters. And if you try and allow a little bit of time for the last chapter where you have to get in the research results and still analyze them, it's best to now bargain on 2 weeks per chapter. If you work 2 weeks per chapter, you will find that you have a little bit, very little bit leeway at the end of the module when it gets really, really pressurized. Okay. So when do I start? You should have started actually at the beginning of February. But then that's now water under the bridge, so you better start today. and go as far as you can, as quick as you can, following the learner guideline prescriptions, and also looking at your postgraduate tutorial, and looking at the webinars that we are doing, and so on. Attending a class if you can, because the class is the one place where you can actually talk to people about your research. Okay. Rules of the game. There's two essential elements in this marketing research module. In this module, you, as a student, have to show that you have a clear understanding of the specific marketing problem that you identified as a topic. It means it's not just, something that you thought about and you put it out there. You will actually have to really explore that marketing problem in the various ways and tools that we are discussing. And then you have to correctly execute the research process steps. Okay. Let's quickly look at the learner module, learner guide as an orientation for the section A. Usually what it does is it gives you the big picture of where this module fits into the curriculum of the honours degree. So for this specific objectives in this regard is to identify an actual marketing problem. Don't suck one from your thumb. It will catch up with you because you will not have the data to do the marketing audit that we require. It will not help you to do the actual research. And then you have to write up this report. Look at your page 4 of your learner guideline. This is where you will find this information. And there is very clear, guidelines and examples of what you are supposed to do under each of those sections and under each of those chapters. Knowledge requirements and handbooks. There's not a prescribed handbook for this module. You use all the books that you have. Previous marketing strategy, research theory, what you have as books can be used in this module to support you. Computer literacy, because you actually have to write the report on the computer, and it means you have to have certain skills in Windows. If you're still struggling with Windows, if you have access to a secretary, they all know Windows. Get them to teach you, because you must do it yourself, not give it to the secretary. And then, of course, the AMRR version of the Harvard referencing method. Harvard is a very general way of doing referencing, and each college actually takes the Harvard referencing guideline and adapt them to reflect the way that they want the referencing to do. So you don't use Harvard referencing that you pulled off the net or whatever. You use the AMRR guideline that's available on the e-learning page with wonderful examples of what and how you are supposed to do this. And this is what we talked about earlier with the negative marking. This is where you can actually lose 15% very easily. Okay, if we look at section B, this is now the interesting part. It is your responsibility, nobody else's. You're on an honors level, and there's a lot of individual responsibility that you have to take. So you have to read the section B more than once so that you are sure that you catch up on everything. Number 6 in section B gives you all the milestones, the different chapters that you have to complete. Number 7 gives you the outline of the final report, including the typical title page that we prefer to use for the reports that you should have in front. And then a chapter by chapter discussion from page 18 to 41. And that is what I cannot understand if people fail this module because they have not read those guidelines. It is really not rocket science, but time. You have to put the time in. And at the end of each chapter, they actually give you evaluation criteria so that you know what the examiner will look at in evaluating your report. Again, the page constraint, 50 pages for the body of the report, excluding the cover page, executive summary, declaration, table of content, reference list, and appendices. Okay, so there's also some guidelines for the suggested chapters, because not all the chapters are the same length if you actually put meat to the chapter. So you may, for instance, have a chapter 1 that is slightly longer, chapter 2 that's slightly shorter, chapter 3 that is around about 10 pages, and then you get into chapter 4 where you report the results, and that may be a long chapter, and then the conclusion may be a little bit shorter as well. So overall, you have to play around with the length of the chapters so that you stay within the 50-page constraint. Okay? And again, please don't start playing with your font size or the spacing, or start dumping stuff in the appendices and then referring the examiner to it. The only stuff that will be marked in the appendices is copies of the data gathering tools and the cover letter. That's it. Nothing else will be marked in the appendices. So don't dump stuff there. It is much more difficult to actually stay within these constraints, because you have to pick and choose the meat of the information and not just, add and carry on prose that does not really talk to the problem or talk to the chapter that you need to put there. So this shows your skill in report writing, how you actually lay out your report and what you put into the different chapters. Okay, still on section B, you see the list of references. Please note the format and approach to such a list. You see an example in page 43. Study the plagiarism policy of IMM and make sure that you use those Harvard guidelines. Negative marking, we've talked about for the quality layout of the report, the text formatting, as well as the in-text citations and reference list. That negative marking in total, 20%. You've worked so hard on the report, and now, because of these technical details, you can lose up to 20 marks. Can you really afford that? Do you want to take that risk? Okay. Now let's look at the nature of research. Research tries to understand the underlying issues better, so that future decisions about those issues are based on better information. It is not meant to prescribe to the company or to the manager what must be done. You cannot promise solutions. All that you can promise is that you will find more information about that actual marketing problem. And as one understands the underlying issues and problems, it makes it better to fix it in future projects or decisions. And that's it. So many people in their research objectives, promise models and promise solutions and prescribe how it should be. No. This is all about answering the what, where, why when type questions so that you can see where the gaps are, where it was not done properly, and where it can be improved. And that is your recommendations that you actually give in chapter 5. The whole of the report before chapter 5 is about finding that information and understanding the problem better. Okay, so one of the issues that you have to do is to find an actual marketing problem. Don't waffle and grab something out of the air. Make sure that you have an actual marketing problem. And you have to build a business case to show why the research is necessary, because this is an applied research module. So if you are not working in marketing or not working at all, you're still looking for something, find a host business or go and talk to the marketing manager in your company and ask, is there something that they would like you to research? It's good and well that they may offer you the opportunity, but you still retain the responsibility to make sure that it's doable in this time frame of this module, which says 2 weeks per chapter. Okay? So when you actually attend classes and incorporate activities on the webinar, work ahead so that you can ask questions. Bring your homework so that you can sort of discuss it with your tutor and with your co-students so that you can hear what they are doing and do a little bit benchmarking of yourself. Okay. Key factors to pass this module: study and follow the learner guideline. Attend classes if you can. Attend the online sessions, and if you cannot, please review the recordings, because this is being recorded and you can look at it as many times as you want. We are starting to look at online chats on the e-learning page, and if necessary, one can even look at Skype sessions. Again, I'm nagging you on this, the IMM version of the Harvard Referencing Guidelines, and only that version. This is not a theoretical module. You have to actually collect data. And that is one of the chapters that also take the most time to do, because people are not always that willing to complete a survey or do an interview, etc. The report must cover data collected this semester. So you cannot use stuff that you did a year or a semester ago, and it is also not a tabletop study. You cannot just, browse on the internet and say, okay, I collected secondary data, this is my research. It's not enough. You have to actually do field research for this module. So let us look at the research report and structure and flow. It starts with chapter 1. Chapter 1 is the foundation. If you don't do chapter 1 properly, you can just as well leave the module, because the problem and context, the problem statement, the research objectives, all focus. It all gives you a scope and a focus to say, what literature will I be reading for chapter 2? What methods will I choose to actually do the research? Who will be my sample population? What tools will I use? So your research objectives absolutely guide you through the rest of the research. The results, the field research, the data that you gather, again, it is based on your research objectives. So if you did not do chapter 1 correctly, chapter 2 will not mean anything, your research design will not work, the results that you've covered will not actually address the research problem as stated in chapter 1. And what conclusion can you come to? I wasted my time for the whole of the 3 months because it's not focused towards that particular problem statement and research objectives that are identified in chapter 1. So it's all aligned. It's a golden thread that goes from chapter 1 to chapter 5 and back to chapter 1. So that is why chapter 1 is so very, very important. Okay. So you can see in the way that we actually look at this, the logical flow from chapter 1 to chapter 2 to chapter 3 to chapter 4 and 5. There is a golden thread and a storyline. So if the symptoms that you mentioned in your problem context is not featured in your problem statement, is not reflected in your research objectives, is not covered in your literature review, does not inform the research design, then really this is not working. So this is very, very important that you keep that focus throughout the report. Okay, so you've all heard this. Garbage in, garbage out. So if you don't properly plan and identify scope and research objectives in chapter 1, the rest is actually garbage in, and that is what you will get out in chapters 4 and 5. But alternatively, you've got this eureka moment where you did it properly, and in chapter 4 and 5 you come to very interesting conclusions and recommendations. Maybe stuff that you did not even expect to see there. So potential eureka moments in chapters 4 and 5 will only happen if you actually identify a proper marketing problem, do a proper marketing audit. Please go and read on Google what is a marketing audit. Develop a very clear, specific problem statement that delimits your scope of your research very clearly. You develop 2 or 4 research objectives based on the problem statement, because remember, those research objectives will form the foundation of your research design, your field research, etc. Do a good quality literature review. I know you haven't had much exposure to literature review, but it's not that difficult, and if you do it properly, as shown in the learner guideline and in these slideshows, you will cope with that. Develop suitable or find suitable questions from the theory and the literature that you read. Don't bargain on it to just suck on your thumb for questions. You have to find them in the theory and in the literature, because it supports the validity of your actual research tool. And check to what extent those research objectives are doable. Solid doable research design based on your research objectives means I'm looking at the access to people, to data, how long will it take, can I actually complete this within the time frame, and etc., etc. So if you can do that, yes, then in chapter 4 and 5 you've got this moment that says, wow, okay, I've done it. On the other side of the coin, if you don't do that, sorry, you're not going to be very successful in your research. So it's from the start, from chapter 1 through to chapter 4, where you have to do everything correctly, as illustrated and discussed in your learner guideline. How do I find or refine a topic? To what extent have you actually started looking at the topic? Can you give me a quick indication? Have you looked at topics? Have you found anything worthwhile? I see Tanya said she started looking at different topics. But yes, you need to do this fairly quickly. All right. You can read strategic marketing magazines on eLearn. You can actually look at your industry magazines, etc., etc. You can consider recent events in your company. Maybe you had a big launch of a new product and somehow the sales figures and customer retention did not happen the way that you thought with this strategy. Maybe the strategy looked wonderful on paper, but in the end it did not work the way that you thought. Or you maybe your company went through re-engineering, etc., etc., and the roles and responsibilities has changed a little bit. Or you want to expand into a new market, new target group, and you need to understand that group. Maybe you are looking at social media as a new channel, etc., etc. There's a lot of topics that you can actually look at inside your company. And if you're still struggling, discuss your potential topics with your marketing manager, because the marketing manager will have to give you approval to do the actual research in the company or go out to your customers. So the sooner you involve your marketing manager, the better. But again, don't let them stretch the scope to a level where you cannot finish in this time frame. If the marketing problem is too big, consider breaking it up in little pieces and saying, okay, this is actually a phased approach. I'm only going to research this one part of the problem. The other parts of the problem will be done in follow-up research, whatever may be the case. So you can do that in that phase. If you're still struggling to find something, find a small business or a franchise nearby and offer to do marketing research on their behalf. Many cases, the small businesses do not have the skills, the capacity or the budget to do it. So you're not going to get paid, but you will finish your module. Consider doing something like customer surveys for them. Customer satisfaction needs, buying patterns, etc., social media preferences, social media platforms, etc. What do they have and what can they fairly cheaply and easily put in place? But be careful, don't sell yourself as a consultant and don't try and angle yourself for a job there, because it influences your objectivity in regards of the research. You are trying to impress the owner so that they will give you a job or will pay you or whatever be the case. The focus here is passing the module. You are a student in this regard. Okay? If you do a good job there, the owner will remember you. But you have to keep bias out of the research. Okay, let's look at finding and refining. Say, for instance, you did find a topic, but it's still very broad. The field and discipline must be sales and marketing. Now you can take your area of interest. Say, for example, you are looking at market growth in a niche market. That is very broad and general. It's fine for a topic, but now I have to get into this topic and understand exactly what am I going to research in this regard. So I'm starting to add detail and refining it to a more specific scope, not such a general one. Say, for example, we are saying we are growing the market share in organic foodstuffs. That is a niche market. So already we are looking at the niche market in organic foodstuffs. Maybe I can look in my problem context, what are the general problems with market growth in organic foodstuffs? The more specific focus may be using social media. So you can see how I add detail to that particular initial focus and actually expand it into a very specific scope. So in the problem review, I will be doing some marketing audit. Again, the word marketing audit, go and look online what exactly marketing audit encompasses. I can now say, okay, what are the barriers and the bottlenecks to growing sales in this niche market of organic foodstuffs by using social media? And that can actually form the base of my problem statement then. And from that, I can identify 2 to 4 research objectives that pick up on the very specific words in my problem statement. Okay, so you can do it yourself. Just start with the discipline marketing. What is the area that you're interested in or the topic? And then you add detail so that it becomes more and more specific. And you can start looking at marketing models that is very suited specifically to that problem, so that you can do the benchmarking against what the company is doing currently versus what the theory suggests, and that is then assisting you to refine the topic even further so that you can draw up the problem statement. If you get to this point, it gets easier to actually do the research objectives. And immediately when you have this scope and focus, it's very easy to write your chapter 1, and it's very easy to actually get the focus for the rest of the research report. You can do this one thing. You will be solidly on the way of actually completing your chapter 1. Okay, so let us look then at the second part of chapter 1, which is the problem context. Remember, you are writing this report for other people. They cannot guess what you're thinking, they don't know what you've done. You have to write the story in such a way that they understand why you picked this particular problem and what is the context or the background in which this particular problem plays out. Nothing plays out in a vacuum. There's always influences and situations around that. And so that is what the problem in context is. It gives that background and context so that the reader can understand why this problem was picked. Very important, the writing style. The problem in context is an unbiased, non-judgmental presentation of the facts. Not thumb-sucking, not fantasy, facts. Evolving in the company, and that refers to the issues raised in your topic or your management dilemma. Do not make any conclusions or recommendations or prescribe all kinds of activities. This is just setting the problem in context. It's very neutral and objective, and you keep an open mind. This is also not the place where you start bashing management. Remember, as a researcher, you have to stay objective and keep an open mind. Okay. Can you write a problem in context for your topic? It's around about 1.5 pages to 2 pages to give a good solid problem in context. It depends on your problem. And the whole problem in context is moving from general to specific, just like we did on that sort of trough that we had for refining your topic. So you may start, say for instance, it depends on your topic. You have to be the judge of what goes into this problem in context. But it may give a picture of the industry and the marketplace where this problem plays out. And the symptoms that is showing that it's not working, not helping you meeting your strategic goals. Recent company background relevant to the topic. Again, it's just 1 or 2 paragraphs, but if you really put a punch in that and really put the actual facts there, it is really, really a solid foundation for the rest of the research. Recent marketing and background activities applicable to the topic. Don't start, going off in all kinds of directions. Keep the focus. Okay? What is the symptoms of the marketing problem? Say, for instance, your sales figures have gone down, despite marketing interventions. Or the specific launch did not work out as well. How do you see that the launch is not successful? Did you not get new customers? Did your sales go down, not change? Whatever may be the case, that is the symptoms that actually help you see what is the main problem. Okay? Read the problem in context that you've written again carefully. Can you, from that problem in context, identify the key marketing problem that will be researched in more depth? Remember, you started at the topic. In the problem context, you add more detail relevant to that topic. Okay? If you cannot identify a key marketing problem from your problem in context, you have to rewrite it. It's as simple as that. Remember, it's like a story. You have to take the reader from point A to point B, and you have to give them the facts and the information so that they can see what is the key marketing problem, and they can see the symptoms that showed you that there is an issue. Okay? Have you cited sources that you used in the section? Say, for instance, you used external sources for the industry, for the marketplace. Please remember the citations and the references. Even if you take stuff from the handbook, you have to reference it. It's not your ideas, original ideas, you got it from somewhere else. Ask your mentor and your manager and talk to them about the issues that you identified in this particular topic. Say, for instance, you had this launch that did not work out, or you are losing customers at a very bad rate, market share, whatever may be the cause. Most often the strategy, and you will know this if you've worked in any business, most often the strategy looks wonderful on paper, but in the actual world it plays out differently. Either people skip some of the processes, procedures, or logistically the stuff just didn't arrive on time, or whatever may be the case. The people that's actually working on that project can tell you. They can tell you what was the actual problems. And that is very, very informative so that you don't work on just a paper-based strategy, but find out underneath what was the actual, issues there. And then in Learner Guideline, page 21, doing the marketing audit, you have then the actual information from the company, and you can then compare it to a very specific model that speaks to your topics. Say, for instance, customer complaints. Go and find the stats and actually sort them into categories and see what exactly is it that the customer is complaining about. Because then you can actually focus your research on particular issues. Say, for instance, the quality or the return rate or the service support that you get after buying, whatever may be the case. But at least get some information from inside the company so that you can do a proper marketing audit. Okay, so there are many marketing issues. There are many host businesses where you can find actual data to do research. This is exactly why, just grasping a theoretical idea from the net and trying to pursue it is very difficult, because you don't get this inside information. Okay, so again, very important, there's a golden thread. You have now identified the topic, you have refined the topic down to more detail that can help you find proper, say for instance, models to look at in your problem review to do the marketing audit. So your problem context is then what is the general problem with growing market share in organic foodstuffs, which is a niche market. And in your problem review, the typical themes would be what are the barriers and bottlenecks to growing sales, what is the issues with social media, both for the company and for the customers, which one or two models can you use to do the mini marketing audit for the specific topic. So you will actually look at your topic and then go and look for models, suitable models that you can actually use for the benchmarking for the audit. Okay, but you can only do an audit if you have the information on what is the company currently doing, not doing, so that you can compare it with the theory. In the case of any marketing audit using a model, you only use the applicable components of that model. Say for instance, you do customer satisfaction and you get a model that deals with more than customer satisfaction only. You only use the components that refer to customer satisfaction. You don't discuss components that's not relevant, that is not helping you understand the underlying issues in this problem. That would be a waste of pages. Remember, pages very important. Okay, so now you have the problem and context. You pick 2 or 3, 4 themes or constructs, and that you use as subheadings in your problem review. You actually compare what the company is doing in that regard against suitable models. So you are doing a factual analysis. Marketing audit is not wishy-washy thinking, I think the company is currently doing it. You find the information. The when, where, what, why answers is what you are using to do the factual analysis. How are things done in the company currently, and how does that compare to what the theory suggests? So the auditing section is actually a little bit longer than the problem and context, because you have to do a proper analysis. You have to judge whether the internal situation is the key, or whether you need to do external analysis as well, or a combination of it. Remember, you have to do a proper analysis, and you have to keep in the page constraints. So what you are doing, and you have to find the information to answer the what, why, where, how type questions, and you find that information by going and talking to your manager, your mentor, or your co-workers that's involved in that report, in that project. And then you focus on what you see from that audit. What are the gaps and the barriers and the bottlenecks in the marketing processes and activities? Because that may show you why the launch was not successful, why the customers are unhappy, etc., etc. So that is the whole purpose of the problem review and the marketing audit, is to actually help you understand better, so that you have a more specific problem statement and scope, and your research objectives then really look at stuff that went wrong, or was not done properly, or was not considered at all during the previous interventions. If you really did not pick up any gaps and barriers after the audit, one of two things, or maybe both: you did not find the right information, you did not pick the right model to do the audit. There are many audits. Don't just grab the nearest best one that you remembered from your previous semester. Find a proper model. Okay, so the purpose of a marketing audit is not to criticize the activities. Remember, you identified a problem. So what we want to do is, what can be done more effectively? What other information that they maybe need to do better informed decisions? Those issues should then be the focus of the research. So very important. Choose a proper model. Do you have enough information to benchmark against? If you didn't do that, you're wasting both of our times. Okay, marketing audit is a structured survey of an organization's marketing efforts. It looks at the way the marketing was planned and managed currently, or for that specific launch, or for that particular new target market, whatever may be the case. What has been done? What else should have been considered and done? And that is then the focus of your study. What has worked? What information is still needed? What can be improved? Okay. So let's look at one particular model that is so generic, because a lot of problems goes to customer communications, internal communications, internal interfaces, and expectations that's not being met, etc., etc. It's used GAPS model of service quality. Remember, for any diagram model that you use, you need to give a figure number that you will list in your list of tables and figures, and you have to give the source where you found it. Okay, so in this regard, you can see there are 5 gaps. A lack of understanding between the customer and the provider, and that is so often the problem. And it can actually start with the understanding of what the customer wants, how that actually informs the specifications of the service or the product, how that actually then links to delivery and or communications to the customer, or the internal communications between departments. perceptions, expectations, what the customer think the marketing material is promising them and what they are actually getting on the ad. How realistic is that? So just an example of a model. There's many out there that you need to find. So that is a type of questions that you can ask for each of the gaps. Just examples of what you can then, what, where, why type questions that you can ask your manager or your co-workers, etc., etc. There's another model, social media plan. Keep the focus. What is your topic? Discuss and compare only the components applicable to the topic. You will have to, for instance, look at how the social media fits into your other marketing strategies, but you will have to look at the specific target audience, content, tools, how are you going to implement it, track and measure, adjust, listen, etc. Maybe you've already started this and it's not working so well. So you can look at each of these components during your audit and then decide on which ones are you going to focus. Again, please look, figure 1, there's the title of the diagram and the source. The actual place where I got it is here at the bottom, but I do not give the online address here in the in-text citations. That detail goes into my reference list with a full format that I use for online purposes. I just put this for interest's sake. Okay, again, there are certain questions that you can ask about certain components depending on your specific topic. So you can really you have to think about the model and what these components are saying. Check on the interfaces and the relations between the various components in a model, and you have to decide what is relevant for your topic or not. Okay, let's continue with our original topic, current market for organic foodstuffs. You can ask your manager, what are the competitors currently doing? What are the current trends in organic foodstuff? What is the company selling in this regard? So what organic foodstuff products do they actually have that is used? Do they have any consumption or turnover patterns based on that particular organic food? The current marketing approach to organic food. What communication is the company currently using? Which channels are they using? How well is it working? Where are the barriers and bottlenecks in the process? Maybe it's older people buying organic foodstuffs and they are not so internet connected, or they require more detailed information than other people, etc. So that is the type of things that you need to know about, so that you actually can really think about what will your research focus on. So when you do the benchmarking, we've spoken about that, you pick 1 or 2 relevant models or theory and adapt it to reflect how things are done in your company. So you know what your company is doing because you've spoken to your manager, co-workers, supervisor, and you have picked appropriate model theory that is relevant, and then you compare to what was done, what was not done, barriers, bottlenecks, etc. And then at the end, as we said previously, what new insight did you gain into the marketing topic? If you did not gain any insight, you did not do the company information gathering properly, you did not pick appropriate model. Okay, back to the golden thread. We've done the problem in context. We've looked at the themes in the problem review. We've done the mini marketing audit. So now that must logically lead to a problem statement. Remember? The problem statement then delimits my research. Very specific scope. What will be researched and what not. Okay. When we talk about the problem statement, one cannot measure impact or influence. Impact says, I'm trying to do a lab experiment. I've got this little petri dish and I add 3 drops. Before the 3 drops, this happened. After the 3 drops, this happened. We are not doing lab experiments. We're working in a very dynamic business. You cannot isolate the impact of one variable in a business versus all the other variables. It's same with influence, same exact thing with influence. So you need to think about doable, measurable issues, okay? For the research paper purpose, remember, we try to understand the issues underlying the marketing problem, not provide solutions or prescribe what to do. So the problem statement is a standalone sentence, very specific scope, and it's less than 2 lines. I don't want to go and look for the problem statement in a whole paragraph or half a page prose. I want to see the problem statement standing on its own, sentence less than 2 lines long. Okay? And the wording is very, very important. So you must play around the wording until it actually shows you very clearly what the research will cover, and you can see the key words that is into that. So if we look at this problem statement, the use of social media as a marketing business channel, we can maybe say the use of social media as a marketing channel is essential in growing the market share of organic foodstuffs. Now remember that the answer to this is actually not very important. Whether the answer is yes or no or in part, you will have learned something. Because in making this problem statement, you are making certain assumptions. Okay? So don't stress about whether this is true, not true, or whatever. You just state what exactly are you going to research. Alright? And it must be in a format that I can say yes, no, or maybe, or I can argue about it. Maybe I can say, no, it's not essential. Or I can show that it can actually play an important role. So concepts that I can pick from the problem statement is the use of social media as a marketing channel. And I want to grow market share. And I want to grow the market share of organic foodstuffs. So there you have very specific indicators of what I will be researching. You cannot actually, mistake that. Maybe the wording